Shane Murphy here, entrepreneur and restaurant marketing expert. Welcome to the Restaurant Rocket Fuel podcast, where we discuss marketing strategies that leading restaurateurs are using to grow and expand their restaurants. This podcast is sponsored by Boostly, the text marketing company that works with every point of sale and online ordering vendor in the industry. No contracts, no monthly fees. Learn more at boostly.com. Welcome back, everybody. Today we're here with Jordan Krolck, who has been the president of Town and Droth for the past 20 years. He's an operating partner for Blue Moon Pizza, a 5-location concept, and sits on the board and advisors for several different companies. He really knows restaurant growth and operations. He's spent time with McDonald's, Arby's, and several different independent brands. So Jordan, we are super excited to have you on today. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your experience and your wisdom with everyone.
Oh, it's so nice. Thank you, Shane. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, maybe before we just dive in to all the juicy details, can you take a few minutes and share a little bit of your background and how you got involved in the industry and what's kind of brought you to this point here?
Sure. I've been very fortunate throughout my career to be mentored and be a part of some wonderful teams. Started as a merchant banker. We managed $1 billion when $1 billion was a lot of money. Developed a relationship with the CEO at that time of McDonald's and became their head of M&A, where we built a $2 billion portfolio of brands. Later kind of was their fix-it guy across the business, heavily involved in the remodeling of all their U.S. stores, and building up the I'm Loving It campaign, which is still around today. And again, was just very fortunate to play a key role in a lot of that. Came down to Atlanta, which is where I live, as the chief development and later chief concept officer of Arby's, where our teams became the fastest growing freestanding drive-through chain. Later was head of some various concepts, pretty much as an operating partner, what's now known as an operating partner to funds. And I've even been outside the industry, where I was a 10-year retained advisor to the leadership team at Home Depot. Since then, I've also bought various companies, been a partner of companies, as you mentioned, with Blue Moon. And then I sit on a number of boards, both as an independent board member and as an investor board member in various concepts, really taking the companies to the next level of success. And then finally, I'm also the professor of franchising at Kennesaw State University, which is about 15 minutes from my house.
Fabulous. I mean, you've had a wealth of experience thinking through, from McDonald's and I'm Loving It. I'm sure there are some great war stories through that to, your recent experience with Blue Moon Pizza. I'd love to maybe hear more of those recent stories with Blue Moon Pizza. Sure. How have you seen that brand grow and develop and shift throughout the last little bit here?
Yeah, so I've only been involved earlier this year is when we got involved, and I was very fortunate that I have a partner named Jeff Gold, and Jeff and I have known each other in the industry and then also as personal friends for a long time. And I'd come across this concept and it really made a lot of sense. Jeff is an operator extraordinaire. And I was able to put him as head of operations. And then also I'm president. And, with Jeff, we've just started, when you get into a new concept such as Blue Moon, now it's a much smaller concept than I've been involved with, especially as a day-to-day operator. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I have this philosophy and I was trying to test it. Is it easier? My philosophy has always been, especially when I was working with franchisees, it's harder to run one store than it is to run 1,000. And I've proven that out. At the same point, we're just in the early stages of building the brand to the point where our goal is to start franchising next year. All the stores are company owned at this juncture. But it is in a true unique spot. It is a bar pizza place. We have a full service bar. It is casual dining, and it has a lot of potential for what it can be. And we're just scraping the initial edges of that.
And so, making that shift from having 5 independently owned locations to franchising, there's a lot of preparation that goes into that. to get to that point where, hey, now we're operating, 1,000. It's a little easier than the first five. What does that preparation process look like for Blue Moon as they're preparing to franchise?
Sure, it's very involved for groups that truly want to do it right. And a franchise relationship is, a really tight relationship that you develop with, people who are essentially investing their life savings in something that you've developed. And the way, in many ways, you're trading a couple of things. As a franchisor, you're trading control, and you're trading true end-all cash flow profit. And what you're getting is a fee, and you're also getting the ability to leverage other people's money. And so that trading of 2 for 2 is incredibly important. And if you want to do it right, there's an incredible amount of planning and belief that's got to go into that. The first thing, and this is what's incredibly critical, is the ability to have a business model that resonates. Essentially, they're going to be paying you a franchise fee. They're also probably going to be paying you a marketing fee, technology fee, and maybe some other fees. And if the business, let's say, is making you as your own company, let's say it's making 10%, well, if you're charging 6% for that and 3% for this and another 1 or 1.5% for something else, that all that money is used up, and your franchisee is going to suffer and probably end up closing his store. So the business model has got to resonate, and then the second thing is you've got to build out operations, finance, marketing, and development. And when all 4 of those things in my mind, have got to be fully built out before you can truly franchise. Now, is it going to be built out to the level of a McDonald's or a major brand? No, they've been doing this for a half a century. At the same point, a lot of potential people who go into franchising kind of slap something together. And when that happens, you tend to have franchisees who don't really have the opportunity to realize what they want out of both the brand and out of their own careers. And that's most important to me. If I'm going to ask somebody and somebody's going to ask me to invest in a brand that I'm involved in, I want them to be incredibly successful. And we've run into that. I was on the board of Tropical Smoothie, and that has grown like a weed, and a lot of people have made incredible careers out of that. Things like, McDonald's and Arby's and so on and so forth. But I've also seen from a distance some brands where, you kind of was wondering how these were built. And in the end, they tended to be built on a house of cards. And the cards failed as times got tight. And we can talk about that. We can talk about brands that work as we've just had in a long-term growth period. And they may have a little bit challenge when the growth period is a little bit tighter, which it's been over the last 9 to 12 months.
Yeah, I'd love to maybe dig into that a little bit. What are the differentiators that you see between those two archetypes of those who kind of are set up to thrive when the economy is working against them, and the opposite?
So as you can see from some of the initial questions we've talked about, I'm very focused on being customer backed. So let's start with the customer and let's work our way back into the decisions and the issues that we're trying to solve for. And so the customer for a restaurant usually chooses their favorite concept when they go out to eat for a given taste, time, and experience. So let's break that down, for example, and I'll just use an example. So let's talk taste. Taste could be, I want a burger, I want Mexican, I want whatever it might be. And so, using one of my concepts that I love, I want a burger, okay? Time is, how much time do I have? You can easily break it down in the restaurant industry by saying waitress service is a long period of time and no waitress service is a short period of time. And it's a very easy way to kind of take a complex topic and break it into a twofold decision. The third thing is experience. Experience is usually the quality of the food, the quality of the service, and the quality of the decor. And again, you can break that down into a lot of different things. But in all reality, we're going to just bucket it into experience. And so if you say, I'm in the mood for a burger, I have no time, and I'm not really focused on experience for this. I'm good for a low-end experience. Well, I go to McDonald's. And I'm not saying McDonald's is a bad experience. I'm just saying it's not like going to Capitol Grill and getting a burger there. And so now why did I choose McDonald's and I didn't choose some other outstanding brands like a Burger King or Wendy's? Well, because I love McDonald's. I really did. I think they're fantastic. And that's a personal trait. There's a lot of people who'd answer that question and say, I love Burger King or Wendy's. And so going back to me, and so I choose McDonald's. And why didn't I choose Burger King? Well, because I love McDonald's. And so what you see is in good times, brands that have a large enough niche where it's a customer's favorite, they do well. But if you're a secondary option where you only go, and we have a big recency bias for lunch and dinner in the United States. If I went to McDonald's today, I may go to Wendy's tomorrow because I just went to McDonald's. And so given that, if you're the first choice, you tend to do really, really well. And if you're the second choice, you're getting the follow-on traffic or your niche isn't large enough. And you see that a lot in tighter times. In good times when we're going out to eat 3, 4, 5 times a week, we're choosing our favorite and often a second favorite. But in tighter times, you're just choosing that one. And so what you see is concepts tend to bifurcate in the market. The concepts that are truly defined do really well, and the ones that maybe aren't as defined don't do so well. So concepts like a Bennigan's. Okay, Bennigan's had a lot of struggles during the last recession and ended up going bankrupt. And if you said, well, Chili's did well because it was a large enough niche's favorite, where Bennigan's just wasn't. And there's a lot of reasons why. But again, if you bring it back to the consumer-backed thinking of taste, time, and experience, you start to break down your brand. How do I, for taste and for let's use Blue Moon, how do I really own pizza? And pizza can be broken down to different types of pizza. Delco, delivery, carryout, eat in, and that all comes into time. How am I using time? And so for us, where we have waitress service, it's for a concept where we have a large amount of time. And then the quality of the food service and the experience. And again, it doesn't mean you have to be the best of the best. We're not going to Capitol Grill every day. You've got to be the best for the segment that you select. And hopefully there's a large enough niche of your customer that wants to do that. So for Blue Moon, our focus is women 25 to 45. And we really think that they can find their place. And so that's what our concept is built around. And so given those three, how do we become their favorite? And that's what our goal is.
I love that. That's a really simple framework that any brand can apply for like taste, time, and experience. And what I really resonate with that you mentioned is that question that any operator can ask: how do I really own blank? If it's my category for taste, it's like, it's pizza or it's burgers or it's, Thai food. How do I own it? And well, gosh, you can brainstorm 5 or 6 things of how do I own that? And there might be like different marketing strategies that apply to that. Maybe I need to improve my awareness. I need to do a little bit of SEO. Maybe I need to just be in front of my customer more and do text marketing or email, or have a loyalty program that when people think pizza, they think Blue Moon. If it's time, well, where do I know where you fall in the spectrum? I lean towards full service. Well, if that's the case, I need to, apply my marketing towards people who are looking for that full service experience. I'm probably not sending out marketing messages for a lunchtime. I might be focused more on dinner or a breakfast experience. And then quality is one of those things of just, again, knowing where my price point is, where do I fit in the market, how do I attach my environment vibes with the decor to the food, and just knowing where you are is the first step, and then asking those questions that you described to actually see what can I do to influence the behavior.
You're exactly right, Shane. I mean, it's truly knowing your customer and who you want your customer to be. So I invest in a lot of businesses. I invest through investors in businesses too, where I bring an investment team into it. And when I see a restaurant and I meet the entrepreneur and he's built a great business, I always ask him a couple of questions, one of which is, who's your customer? And if they say, oh, it's great, everyone's our customer, you could be right. But the skepticism in my brain is worrying a little bit, because I have two boys, okay? They're 22 and 25. They do not go on a Saturday night where my wife and I go. My wife and I on a Saturday night or even on a Tuesday night aren't going where there's a lot of young kids around. And a 13-year-old girl has a different belief in what restaurant that she wants to participate than a 35-year-old woman. You know, and then you take demographics and you take social areas and you take your history and so on and so forth, and you see that everybody starts getting niched into micro segments of customers. And the critical part is to own that. Figure out, who do you want to be? And if your thought is, I want everyone to be my customer, we don't want to get back to, there was an old, I'm not picking on Wendy's, I love Wendy's, but there was an old ad that Wendy's did, I think in the 90s, where they said, no kids. Well, as soon as you start restricting your customers, that's not what we're talking about. It's saying, everybody is welcome in my restaurant, but I'm going to focus on this. And we learn that in a couple areas. So for example, let's look at television. ESPN. If you look at the ads, they're beer ads. Everything is aimed at a male 18 to 30 years old. My wife loves sports. You don't want to be around when the Georgia football game is around with her. She's going to kill me for that. But, you know, she loves ESPN, but the ads aren't marketed to her. You don't see typically ads, and again, I want to be very careful about generalizations, but things that are more attractive to women of her age and her interests. And what these channels have done is they said, hey, you know what? We're going to welcome you in. You don't see things where they say, hey, don't come in if you're, you know, my wife. But they welcome it, but they're not focused on it. And so that's what a good restaurant does too. We're going to welcome everybody to our restaurant, but we know who our customer is. And for us, by focusing on women between the ages of 23 and 45, they're making the food decisions often. They want different things. If we've said we want men 23 to 45, we're a sports bar. Well, we're not that. We don't have 30 TVs. There's sports bar places. Buffalo Wild Wings, it does it better than us, is a sports bar. So that's not who we are. We are what we think we are, and we need to be the number one choice for that segment.
And so I think that this is a unique one, because that question of, well, who is your customer, often, especially in the beginning, is an unknown. You might have a hypothesis, or you're trying to go a certain direction, and the market helps to define what that is. How does a brand truly narrow in on, this is who I am, so they can truly own it? Like, how did that come across with Blue Moon? Has that always been the idea of, we're targeting, you know, women 25 to 45, or did that shift? And how can operators really identify that so they can then lean in and make those decisions related to taste and time and the you know, environment and experience to really focus on that niche? Because I think what you're saying, when they can really own their niche, your marketing gets more simple. You know what the messaging should be, who it's for, and you end up getting a greater return everyone's welcome, but put your dollars focused on your niche. I'm curious, how does one really figure that out?
Yeah, and it's a great question, and it starts with a couple things. First of all, with Blue Moon, we're just getting into it, and no, they didn't have a focus, and we do have some stores where, due to where the real estate is and that it's a legacy chain, that we can't do that. We have a store right near a very well performing store right near a military base, and we have a lot of wonderful female officers who come to our concept, but that store is probably still about 60-65% male, just because of the location and the surrounding amount of the demographics. So the critical part to understand is what success is for a young brand. And it could be a brand like yours, it could be a restaurant, it could be whatever it might be. But people like to talk about that I started here, okay, and now I'm here. And it was a straight line. This is how I got here. Harvard Business Review. We're going to write a 10-page, review of the company. And it was here, and we knew, and we knew, and we knew, and we knew. And guess what? We're there.
Very rare.
In reality, success is you start here, you go like this all over the place, back and forth, and hopefully if things work out well, you end up there. And it's like looking at social media where everybody seems to have a great life. Well, okay, I hope they do. I'm not believing that just yet. And so, again, it's understanding that your brand can change. It can morph. The best operators are incredibly flexible to understand that. But going back to my days in driver's ed when I was 15 years old, back, when we were learning how to drive wagon trains, the first thing was aim high in steering. Figure out where you want to go. And hopefully it becomes a straight line for you. Hopefully you're that exception. But understand that there's going to be a lot of curves in that road on the way up there. And the best companies know how to drive through those curves and understand that, wow, you know what? This is not exactly where we planned. Wow, you know what? This promotion is really bringing in this type of customer. Do we want to dive in? Do we not? And it's that constant iteration. We talked about iterating a menu. You got to also iterate your brand as it grows. It's going to become different things to different people. When we had Chipotle and McDonald's, it was such an anti-establishment brand. I mean, it had 24 stores in the beginning. I mean, when we had it at McDonald's. And, now at its current size, as much as they still have an anti-establishment vibe a little bit, they're an establishment. Same thing with Starbucks, same with a lot of the brands that I grew up with. Chick-fil-A, this regional love company. Well, it can't be. It's too big now. And the nice thing is it's redeveloped its brand. It still has some of its key tent poles that are critically important. And if you looked at some of the beliefs that they've had from the beginning, those beliefs are probably still there. But they've also had to adjust and adapt the brand as times have changed. And they've done a great job. They've all done.
And so there's a mix here of really, as you're preparing to franchise, you have to have the operations, the marketing, you have to have everything repeatable and foundational in place. And often that comes through the hard knocks of figuring it out with the first store. Well, let's try figuring out, can we repeat this with a second? And then, gosh, the third store didn't go nearly as smoothly as the second, but the fourth got a little bit better. And now we're starting to get dialed in with operations, finance, marketing, development. How do you recognize that the marketing side of your business and operations is truly at a spot where it's ready to hand off someone new who's putting in their life savings, wanting to make a bet on what you've built, and knowing that, hey, we can start up this new location, the franchisee puts their money in, and we can hand them the toolkit, and their marketing is going to actually be effective in this maybe heritage market or non-heritage market.
Are there key indicators that you're looking at to say our marketing operations are really dialed in and ready for franchising?
Sure. So a great franchisor has a firm grasp of marketing, because let's just look at how the industry has changed. When we were trying to figure out Arby's, for example, we sat there with yellow pads, and we learned really quickly that we were doing, based on those volumes, $200,000 of eat-in traffic, which was 100 seats. Okay, go through the math. And my team, when we started, were building 96-seat buildings. Well, again, 2 people could sit at a 4-spot and a 4-top and things like that. But in all reality, if you're building a restaurant and you're getting 100 customers a day and you're building 96 seats, everyone is probably coming at the exact same moment? I don't think so. So we became the first company to come out with basically a 35 to 40 seat restaurant. And that's what spurred growth. And again, it's fitting don't sell the way you want to sell the way your customers want to buy is a big phrase that I've used for the last 20 years. And so with marketing, the toughest thing in the restaurant industry is in the last 5 years, if you said what's one of the toughest things, not the toughest, but one of them, is the amount of systems an operator needs to learn. Back then, it was a register, and you typed the numbers, and if you learned a 10 key, and you were great. Now you have a system like for Blue Moon, we have R365 for accounting, we have Toast for POS, we have our marketing groups who have their own proprietary systems. We have DoorDash and Uber Eats we got to learn their systems. And so it becomes incredibly difficult. And I don't know about most operators, but I would argue that if I generalized operators, they're not sitting there and they've retired from Facebook and learning, being a tech system guru, building Substacks and things like that. So, the critical part is a franchisor is how do you give a franchisee fewer systems and manage it? Well, that's step one. Now let's overlay marketing on top of it. Marketing, I would say, for sure in the last decade, but maybe even in the last few years, has gotten unbelievably complex. It used to be, I put an ad in a paper and people come. Or I get out there, and then it became a sign twirl. I twirl a sign and people come. Great ideas, by the way, still. But now I break down marketing into 12 areas. I'm going to try not to bore you, so I'll go through them really fast. Okay? Social media management. Okay, who's doing your Instagrams? Who's doing your Facebooks? Your website, is it driving traffic? Is it not driving traffic? Email and SMS, and I bet in your world, people break that into 2. That's not even 1. For me, I'm putting in 1. Paid ads, pizza, Google ads. I need to understand paid ads. Online reputation. Who's doing the responses? Who's responding to my reputation when people say, we love you, or we had a tough visit the other day? Loyalty, and you and I could talk for an hour just on loyalty, because I can't stand transactional loyalty, which is I'm going to pay you money to come to my brand. I believe in loyalty where I know you love me, like Cheers, going back to my day, where everybody knows your name. That drives true loyalty. An app. Okay, what is my app? Do I have an app? Do I need an app? Catering. What's my catering? Third-party optimization. Third party is incredibly important, especially in my business, but I want them optimized. Online ordering. So that's the flip side. I want to bring people to first-party optimization. Partnerships and PR. Is that 2 things? I'm just bringing it into 1 because otherwise I'm going to have 20 things. But I need to have the right amount of partnerships and the right amount of PR. And then finally, graphic design, which is the old, what does my logo look like? People say, oh, we're going to do a brand book for you. Okay, well, that's great. What are all that graphic design pieces? And I'm probably missing 2 or 3. That's a dozen. Well, how many of those can I solve for a franchisee before they open the door? Because you're in the industry. Who can do all 12 well? It's really hard when you're a small operator. Again, McDonald's, Chili's, they do it really well. But they have a huge team. As a small franchisor, you got to pick, you got to choose, you got to build as many systems as possible. And, we're just in the process of building what is the game plan that we need as a potential franchisor to do it. and then hopefully we introduce it. Then again, hopefully I didn't bore people with that huge list, or overwhelm them, but it is overwhelming. And the critical part of a franchisor is to understand that.
Well, and that's part of the thing, going back to your concept of it's harder to operate a single unit than 1,000. As you go down that list of 12 things, every independent operator out there is like, yeah, this is my checklist of things that I either do or I know in the back of my mind I should be doing, but I don't have the time to do it all. And so some of it I've done to its most basic form. Others, like I make sure to respond to every single review. But gosh, I know I don't have a loyalty program in place that delights my guest and puts me in their top 5 of people when they say, oh, I'm hungry, I need to go out to eat. But every operator knows, gosh, there's way more than I can realistically do. And I think that's the beauty of what you're talking about in your journey of preparing to franchise is, as people put in their money and bet on this dream that you've developed, you're able to take certain things that just get done really exceptionally well so that the franchisee can focus on their areas and their strengths that they can do exceptionally well. And together, you create a brand that delights the guest, keeps them coming back, brings their friends. And I've absolutely loved this conversation because it's the perspective that many operators desire to one day franchise. And the playbook comes often through the school of hard knocks. You've seen that time and time again, and you're in that phase now of proving out your theory and experiencing that firsthand from a small brand to what's someday going to be, a fantastic, large scale regional brand. And I love this moment of being able to take the snapshot of where you are, the thought and the processes that you're undergoing to reach that next wave of scale. And everything that you've shared today is extremely applicable for any brand or operator of any size and scale. So there's just a massive amount of gold that you've shared today, Jordan. So thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experience. How can our listeners learn more about you or follow you or your brands and concepts?
So the best way is to reach out. I rarely don't respond to people because it's the same way when you have a restaurant. You need to respond to every customer the best way possible. So again, the best way is through Town and Droth, the website. You'll see me, and that's really it's incredibly trite. But I was asked when I was an early operating partner, and they said, "Well, what do you typically do?" And I said, "Well, I do turnaround and I drive growth." And so they said, "Well, you need a name because JK Consulting doesn't work." And so it became Town and Droth, which was short for turnaround, and Droth became short for drive growth. And so that's what I spend most of my time doing. That's the best way to reach me. And the way that I would be incredibly willing to spend as much time as you want, come to Blue Moon. Let's do a large catering order. You could never complain about that. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, feel free to reach out any way you can.
Amazing. Jordan, thank you for your time experience and really appreciate these insights. Very helpful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Restaurant Rocket Fuel. And thank you to the amazing restaurateurs that work so hard to provide an amazing guest experience for our communities. Again, this podcast is sponsored by Boostly. To see how we can drive more revenue to your business, visit boostly.com. Don't forget to subscribe and go out there and maximize the potential that you and your business have in front of you.